Thank you, Mike.
Hey, Father, how you doing? Good to see you. Very good, very good, very good.
Taking Mike and his wife Trish have been like helping put everything together with this setting and everything. So
Just trying to get it. Yeah. Now, what we did was we switched. You had it on 9s.
yeah.
I went to 10s, moved it back a little because Stephanie's gonna have her own
Oh,
light
yeah,
shining
yeah.
down.
Perfect.
That's gonna give you more darkness up here.
Yeah, that's great.
You're gonna do your talk from the ambo or from?
Yeah, I'm
You're
gonna do
gonna have.
everything from
Are
here.
you doing anything from your? You gonna
just
have
gonna
anything
read it.
lighted behind you? Because what I'll do is when you're talking, I'll throw these front lights
Yeah,
on
I'll
for
show
you,
you.
so
Just
that
have
give
it.
you more light.
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, hold on. Deacon, let me see what this looks like here. All right?
Yeah, I got your mic already.
Oh, no, this is fine.
Okay, you sure you're not gonna have a glare?
No,
Well,
we're good.
You can, but it also, you're gonna read like this in darkness, but when you're talking, I'll put the light on for you.
Oh, you
It's just
you
gonna
don't
give
have to if you
more,
don't want to. I don't have any notes. I have it all. It's all on my noggin. We're good. Yeah, and then I could just shut this off.
Yeah, you'll shut that off, because that's gonna glare you.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what, let's see if you can read with these lights.
Okay.
Okay, let's go to 1.
Hey.
Yeah, if you want to keep it dim, if your intention is to like keep it as dim as possible, I don't need these lights because this will be fine. You know,
How do you wanna work it?
that's up to
So
you
just,
guys.
yeah, if you want to just use this, then I guess we just won't turn it on.
Okay.
Yeah.
If that's if you're comfortable with that, that's fine.
No, yeah, dude. I'm good.
Okay.
welcome to our holy hour here at St. Rose. We're excited to have with us tonight Father David Atanasio. We'd like to welcome all of you into the sacrament of confession this evening. Father Allen will be back in the library for the entire holy hour. So he will be back there for confession if you would like to take advantage of that sacrament. At this time, I invite you to please kneel as we begin.
Prepare the way of the
My friends, the Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Glory to you, O Lord. I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine grower. He takes away every branch in me that does not bear fruit, and every one that does he prunes, so that it bears more fruit. You are already pruned because of the word that I spoke to you. Remain in me as I remain in you. Just as a branch cannot bear fruit on its own unless it remains on the vine, so neither can you unless you remain in me. I am the vine, and you are the branches. Whoever remains in me and I in him will bear much fruit, because without me you can do nothing. Anyone who does not remain in me will be thrown out like a branch and wither. People will gather them and throw them into a fire, and they will be burned. If you remain in me, and my words remain in you, ask for whatever you want, and it will be done for you. By this is my Father glorified, that you bear much fruit and become my disciples. As the Father loves me, so I also love you. Remain in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and remain in his love. The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. Hey, well, good evening, everybody. I'm so honored to be here. I love working with Tom and Steph. I forgot how beautiful your voice is because we haven't worked together in a few years. So it's just, oh man, I'm already, like, my soul is already hitting the rafters. Here's just being here and being able to pray with you all. So I'm hoping that the words that I kind of give you will at least help you ascend a little bit spiritually instead of plummeting you right down to the ground. So I had come across this beautiful quote that has kind of helped shape, my my spirituality and how I approach my relationships. Communion without confession is shallow or dead. Communion without confession is shallow or even dead. And the quote hit home for me because probably about 20 years ago, I was praying for a best friend. I had grown up with guys, we played ball together, and I'm the oldest of 8. So it wasn't like I was alone or lonely in life, but I didn't have a best friend. And when I'd prayed 3 years for a best friend, and what my intention was while I was praying was that the Lord would send somebody that would, want to be just as active, either sports-wise or just active as far as doing other things or kind of taking me out of my own box and shell to get me kind of involved in doing other things that maybe I would be too afraid to do, and somebody that I could share my relationship with Jesus Christ with. That was kind of my intention. And for 3 years I prayed that prayer. And then my buddy came along, and and I knew that the Lord had sent him, and that he was the person that would eventually end up being my best friend. Now, we were doing a whole bunch of stuff. Now, my buddy is crazy. My buddy Sean is nuts. So when I asked for that person who would take me out of my box, Sean would be the guy dude, let's go bungee jumping, but not strap ourselves in all together. You know what I mean? He's a little bit nuts. So I like to believe that we work together. I kind of rein him in a little bit. And at the same time, he kind of takes me out of my box to kind of open me up to different experiences. And I'm grateful for him. Grateful for him. About 5 years into our friendship, at the time, we were doing a lot of like beach volleyball and stuff, and we were hanging out multiple times a week. And it would just be like the random text like, yo, what are you up to? You want to get a beer or something? And it was good, and then like we went on this camping trip with just a couple of other guys. And at that point, I was in the seminary, I was studying, and in the seminary, like, man, the church has a way of kind of breaking you down. And so, like, I was kind of bringing a lot to that weekend because I was, like, nervous as to, like, whether or not the Lord was calling me to this life. I was struggling with some issues with my father, so, like, we weren't kind of speaking at that time. Like, we were kind of butting heads. And, my buddy didn't, none of my buddies knew about that. It's just kind of keeping that interior, keeping that inside. And we get on this weekend, this camping weekend, and the one thing about a best friend after a while is that they really know how to piss you off, right? You got that person in your life, maybe it's your spouse, right? Man, they know how to press those buttons, right? And so we're on this weekend, and he is just riding me. He is hitting all the buttons. And at one point, he said something, and in the very irrational Italian that I am, I just exploded. And I was saying all kinds, because when I bottle things up, I keep it repressed. And then all of a sudden, everything comes out, right? Stuff that might not even be related to him comes out. He's looking at me like, what, right? I said some stupid stuff. I said some irrational stuff. And then I knew I said some hurtful stuff because, in the middle of my tirade, I saw his face just kind of pull back a little bit. And as soon as I said whatever I said, I don't even remember what I said, half the stuff I said. But the volcano had exploded, and I knew that I messed up. We kind of brushed it. We swept it under the carpet. We kind of just moved on with the rest of the weekend, the camping experience. And then we got back. And my pride was such that I did not reach out to him. I just didn't want to have to eventually deal with it. So, we kind of stopped talking for a while. And we went from hanging out multiple times a week, at least throwing a text message here or there, to radio silence. And after a few months, I just reached out. I was like, dude, can we get together? So we got together, and I just apologized. And we had this unbelievable conversation. Was one of the best conversations that I've ever had in my life with somebody, because it made me have to be vulnerable, to apologize, to suck up my pride, say I was sorry to him right to his face, so that we could move on. As soon as I apologized, he was like, yeah, dude, what happened? And he was like, what was it? Then I kind of started telling him some stuff, and he was just like, well, why didn't you just tell me? And then we were able to move forward. That one apology changed, not to be dramatic, but changed so much of my life. That one I'm sorry, that hour conversation at an Applebee's, we even split the bill, had really kind of brought about so much happiness that I could not perceive at that particular moment in time. A few years later, he would eventually find the love of his life. And he brought her, when he brought her home from college, I got to meet her. He then, a year or two later, had asked me to be a groomsman at his wedding. And then a year later, He asked me to be the godfather to his first child. And now, 10 years later after that moment, he's now got 4 more kids, and they look so excited to seeing Uncle Dave come over the house. Who's jumping on my back, give me a piggyback ride, who's trying to shoot me in the face with a Nerf gun, the dog's biting my arm. I could sit down at dinner with them, and I can enjoy the embrace of not my best friend and his relationship, but now his wife and his 5 kids. It is one of the best blessings that God has ever given me. And it all started, really, with an I'm sorry. Guys, we are now in the middle of this season of Lent. And, we have to go back to that principle, the one thing that I told you I shape a lot of my relationships with is that communion without confession is either shallow or it even dies, it's dead. And we can know that just from a very human experience, as I kind of described that experience with my buddy Sean, but you probably have multiple moments. If I gave you the pulpit, you could have a moment where an I'm sorry changed the course of maybe your marriage, right? Or some of your friendships, or even with your siblings. And I'm sorry goes a very long way. Because there's something in the moment of having to ask for forgiveness and forgiving somebody if they're the one forgiving you, asking for forgiveness, that brings us both into a moment of vulnerability. We're raw. And it's interesting, right? It doesn't make any sense, because at that moment with that kind of vulnerability, you would think that nothing good could come out of that. But when the I'm sorry takes place and forgiveness is mutually exchanged, the relationship plummets deeper into a deeper bond of communal love. Whether it's fraternal love, whether it's filial love, or even within the context of your relationships, of marriage, even marital love. And if you and I are approaching some of our relationships like this in a very human way, we have to ask ourselves, are we doing that with our relationship with Jesus Christ? Because sometimes I think we have to just take a step back and really kind of examine how we relate with Christ. Are we living our relationship as a Christian just following the commandments to say, well, I could check off this box, and I could check off this box, and I've done my Lenten sacrifice, and I've done this, and the checklist looks perfect and clean. But do we actually treat Jesus as the great relationship in our life? Are you and I taking the time to really own up and say, I'm sorry for the things that have blocked us in our relationship towards Christ? Because the same principle applies as it would to any relationship that we have here on earth. It happens the same way with Christ. If you and I are not taking the time to say I'm sorry, to use the sacrament of confession, or to take the moment at the penitential rite in the Mass to own our sin and ask for forgiveness, right? Then you and I have more walls up in our relationship with Christ than we might really want to acknowledge or admit. In the gospel, I chose this gospel for a reason, because Jesus about 5 times says, remain in my love. Remain in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will remain in my love, and you will remain in the same love that the Father and I share. Right? Well, here's the thing. In the image of the vine and the branches, Jesus being the vine, you and I being the branches, you and I, if we fail to actually ask for forgiveness for our shortcomings and failures and sins and the things that we've done wrong, then you and I are voluntarily breaking ourselves off, being dead branches of communion from the vine. If you and I do not own it and ask for that forgiveness, then you and I are part of that story that's not really beautiful. We are allowing ourselves to be dead inside, and we're willingly not accepting communion with Christ. But if you and I ask for that forgiveness, if you and I want communion with Him, then our relationship with Him grows, and it brings about blessings within our heart that we never thought were even imaginable. I had no idea when I apologized and sucked up my pride at that Applebee's in Lindenhurst 15 years ago, that my buddy Sean would ask me to then partake in all of these landmark moments of his life. Matter of fact, after Easter, he invited me with the family to go down to Tennessee to celebrate, to just go on vacation with them. Right? I have been looking forward to that for about 5 months. There have been a number of blessings that have come forward that I could not perceive in that moment. And spiritually, in our relationship with Christ, we might not be able to perceive the blessings that come forth from acknowledging what is wrong inside and asking Christ for forgiveness. When we do that, an abundance of blessings just come at us, come over us throughout the duration of our life. Things in our life, the spiritual growth that you and I didn't think was possible or even could imagine, we're then doing the impossible that we never thought was even on the horizon for our own lives. And Jesus becomes more and more real to us with each and every I'm sorry. Because communion with confession is life-giving. Communion with confession, with that I'm sorry, is fruitful. It brings about a depth of love that flows from within. And now we could use it the other way, our relationship with Christ when we practice the sacrament of confession, when we really take the time. And Deacon, where are you? Deacon Mike, where are you? Oh, he's over here. All right, so I'm going to put him on the hot seat too, right? When we're at the Mass, right, and we're doing the penitential rite, please take that moment to just pause for a couple of seconds. 3 seconds in a quiet church, and that feels like an eternity. It feels like a lifetime. But that gives us the opportunity, guys, to then really focus. Let's take advantage of those moments. 3 seconds, you can drum up a lot of things we've done wrong, right? Especially in a silent church, right? It feels like like an eternity, as you were saying, right? But when we do that, then we've predisposed ourselves for the blessings that our Lord would give us in the sacrament of communion. And then the more we practice that, we're more willing and ready to have the courage to go to confession and to confess everything and to just own it. Because sometimes it might be tough. Sometimes